What's going on, guys? This is Tabmock99. We need to discuss something very important. As you know, there was recently a tragedy in the South Florida area, my area. There was a school shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. 17 people were brutally murdered. This affects me as I know people who went to that school. I'm in the South Florida area. I've been inside the Stoneman Douglas building. So to think that a tragedy like that happened near me, where I live, affects me greatly. But it seems like every time one of these tragedies happens, people use this as an excuse to blame violent video games. So at some point, we have to ask, can violent video games cause violence in the real world? My answer to that would be no, of course not. What goes on in the mind of a killer has virtually nothing to do with the entertainment media that they've been consuming. I've got a master's degree in applied psychology, so I'm going to share with you what I know about the topic and about the way media can impact us. The most famous example in all of psychology is the famous Bobo doll experiments from the 1950s. They would give a group of kids what's called a Bobo doll, and they would ask the kids to play with it, and everything was fine. They played with it nice and normal. Then they took another group of kids and showed them a video of somebody just punching the Bobo doll over and over again. And then they asked that group of kids, you play with the Bobo doll. Well, of course, the way this group of kids played with the Bobo doll was much more violent and aggressive than the other group, because that's the behavior that was modeled for them. And this is the kind of research that gets misused by people who have an agenda, who want to try to prove a relationship between violence on the screen and violence in the real world. Notice that none of those kids actually had violent problems in the classroom. None of them were said to have become more violent around their classmates. They just had a more aggressive form of play when it came to the Bobo doll specifically, but that doesn't translate into violence in the real world. Now, of course, the media that we consume can affect us. It can shape our thoughts, and it can shape our imaginations. I remember as a kid watching an episode of Superman. The first thing I wanted to do was dress up and wear a red cape, or really a red towel, and pretend that it was a cape, and act like I could fly. But it didn't mean I was going to go jumping off of buildings. It didn't mean that I was going to go and try and prove that I could fly for real. It was just pretend, and even as a kid, we all knew it. So I don't think it's fair at all to say that violence on the screen will turn into real-life violence. Certainly not killing someone's classmates because of a video game. It doesn't make any sense, and it seems like we have the discussion every time there's one of these tragedies. There's a meme going around saying that the violent video games argument receives an HD remaster. Because back in the 90s, it was Jack Thompson. But today, a lot of our leaders have that same mentality, that same type of thinking, despite the fact that there's no empirical evidence linking violent games to this kind of tragedy. Well, despite the fact that these video games are available all over the world, this particular form of violence seems mostly confined to the United States. So, can a reasonable person infer that these video games somehow affect children in the United States differently than they affect children elsewhere? It seems kind of doubtful. It seems more likely that the United States government is overreacting to violent video games. It wouldn't be the first time, nor do I expect that it'll be the last. Also, what's interesting is it's not just the United States government that overreacts. The German government has actually banned violent video games, including Mortal Kombat. Joining me now is MK Dan, also known as MK Universe. So, Dan, thank you very much for joining me.
No problem, man.
So I was hoping that, we've been talking a little bit about violence in video games and how the media is kind of blaming video games on some of the violent incidents we've had, like the shooting at the Parkland High School and things like that. The American government has overreacted, I think. Every time there's one of these incidents, there's congressional hearings. We saw that in the 90s. Now they're back at it again, talking about how video games are to blame, and they're meeting with the leaders of the video game industry to try and do something about the violent content. And I just want to get an international perspective, because it's not just the United States government that overreacts to violent video games. Your neighbor, Germany, they've had some overreactions of their own, haven't they?
Yeah, I heard one day they had also the same incident in Germany, that someone got in the school and shoot everyone. So there was the same problem after this. what's concerning video games or whatever. They found at the guy's house, they found a Counter-Strike, the game Counter-Strike, like Call of Duty, whatever. And they had the same idea to ban video games, ego shooters, because they thinking that this causes the problems.
Right. So there was one shooter, and he happened to have Counter-Strike on his computer, and that was all they needed. Counter-Strike is obviously linked to the violent incidents. Banned first-person shooters.
Exactly, yes.
And Mortal Kombat was banned in Germany, too, wasn't it? Mortal Kombat was?
Yes. Totally banned in Germany. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So from the beginning, right from the beginning, the first installment of Mortal Kombat, totally banned.
Definitely banned, yes.
But they've eased up. It's not so restricted now, right? Like people in Germany can get Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, now they change since MKX. Since MKX was out, now they unbanned Mortal Kombat, actually.
Right, like the most violent installment, that one's okay.
Exactly, yes.
So what about the old ones? They're still banned?
Yeah, they are still banned.
So I know you've got a lot of gamer friends in Germany. What would happen to someone in Germany if they were to play one of these banned games like Counter-Strike or Mortal Kombat? What would happen to them?
Actually, today is no problem anymore, but I remember some guys when I started with Mortal Kombat, when I opened MK Universe 2005. I know a lot of people in Germany, and they told me, when you had Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3 in your own possession in your house, and someone from the police or whatever saw that you have this game at your house, they took it away.
So they would just confiscate the game?
Yes, exactly.
Were there any other repercussions? Did they have to face fines or jail time or anything like this?
I don't know exactly, because it's like I said, I not live in Germany. I have not the same situation that they have. So
right.
Not the same in Luxembourg now that in Germany. We have no problem, whatever, with any games, Luxembourg, you can play whatever you want. If you want to shoot people on video games, you can do it,
It's great. It's the way it should be.
Yeah.
So, any of your German friends, they would have ways around the ban. They would do something to get a hold of the games, right? What did people usually do to try to get a hold of banned video games?
Good question.
Did they drive over the border? Did they cross into Luxembourg and pick up copies there and drive back?
Maybe, I think it's more that they buy it on eBay or whatever, and when they came to Germany in the post office, whatever, if they had chance, they could not control the package, get not control it. Yeah, you have the game.
Right. Yeah, you got to worry about customs.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Do you have any other?
I know a lot of MK collectors in Germany, and when I see this collection, what they have, so it is not impossible to get all the banned stuff or whatever.
Oh yeah, there's a way around anything if you're determined.
But in Germany, it's not just some video games that is banned. It's some music, horror movies, or whatever.
Right.
Everything what is really gory, bloody. Yeah.
Yeah, all forms of media are at risk.
Yes.
I got you. I remember, I seem to recall that you had some kind of a funny story for me about one of your friends, right? Something involving maybe Mortal Kombat or maybe another game.
Oh.
Putting you on the spot now.
I don't know.
That's all right. That's all right. But yeah, the whole thing is, we've been talking here. It's just, there's always these violence incidents that, they pop up every once in a while. And video games are always not the first thing that people blame, but it always comes up at some point. You know what I mean? It always comes up at some point. Hey, let's look at the games that these guys are playing. Maybe there's something to it. And, the evidence, it just isn't there. There's so many gamers, and very, very few of them ever have any of these violent incidents. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at it as a percentage, it just doesn't make any sense to blame games.
Yeah, but this is what I cannot understand, you know. Now you got the problem now again in Florida in the school, and then it's again talking about video games. But you know, we European, we cannot understand that you can go in the school or whatever, in a bar or whatever, with a gun. It is not for us. It is crazy to think about that, you know.
Right. Because
I think they should ban first the weapons before they ban video games or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would make more sense because the weapons are actually used to carry out the attacks. You know, the games aren't used in the attacks. The theory is that the games are driving the aggression and makes them want to attack in the first place. But, you know, the evidence for that is just lacking. There's nothing there.
This is totally stupid. I don't know. It has nothing to do with this. I think if I want to be a killer, I go outside and I kill everyone. But why? You know, I will not coming up with the idea to buy a gun and to shoot people off.
Right, or even with a truck or a bomb, you know, like a homemade explosive, whatever. But you've been playing Mortal Kombat for how many years now? 25?
25, yes.
Yeah, we just had the 25-year anniversary of the series. People like us, we've been playing since the very first game, and we haven't had any incidents like this.
I'm not going on the street and doing fatalities or rip-offs heads or whatever. It is impossible first. So
yeah, you don't go around ripping people in half, making them explode with like 8 rib cages.
Yeah, no, you cannot doing that. So I don't know if it is the fault of the video games. I don't think so.
It doesn't seem likely. I mean, I guess if anything, there's people who have mental health problems. There's people who are already prone to aggression. You know, maybe playing a violent video game might push those people over the edge. I don't think that's really been demonstrated yet. There's maybe something to it. But look at how many gamers there are that would never do anything like this. I mean, you have to take that into consideration when you're looking at the cause and effect.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, well, listen, Dan, thank you very much for joining me. It was great talking about this with you.
Okay, no problem, huh?
Thanks for joining me, Dan. Coming up next is Total Mortal Kombat from Australia. He's going to share his experience of how the Australian government has overreacted to violent video games. Luke, thank you so much for joining me.
No worries.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit to you about the violence in video games because that always comes up, you know, with the recent attacks in Florida and maybe some other places. Video games are the target once again. Our government has its eye. You know, our leaders are talking to the leaders of the video game industry saying maybe the video games are responsible for all this, which, you know, we as gamers, we think this is nonsense because, like my shirt says, you know, contrary to popular opinion, these do not make me a killer.
I need that shirt.
Yeah,
look, they always target when something really bad happens. They have to target something else that's kind of outside the spectrum of where it happens. So it's always video games. It's always satanic, heavy metal music, which I like.
Yeah.
Not satanic, but, you know, just heavy metal music in general.
Yeah, you got the headbanger look going on.
Movies, like they'll blame all that stuff. But video games are the easiest one to blame because, like, you know, any parent who's watched someone play, like, sit there, like, you know, glued to the TV, and they might be like, die, you know, they'll just be into the game and into their own world, but that doesn't make them necessarily a sicko. A sicko is just a sicko, you know, but for people who don't understand that world, they think that games hypnotize us and make us do shit, you know, which is utterly ridiculous. It's been proven. They've done studies over the last 10 years, and it's been proven that video games do not have any influence over the actions of people.
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. And yeah, I covered that a little bit too. So everybody is kind of fixated right now on, the world's eyes are looking at the American government. The American government is overreacting because a lot of these other countries kind of have the same games, right? And they don't necessarily have these same problems. But it's not just the American government that overreacts to violent video games like Mortal Kombat. Now, you're from Australia. Mortal Kombat's been banned from there, right?
It has. One time. Once. That was Mortal Kombat 9. Like, Australia's always, sort of not cared about Mortal Kombat because it's always been fantasy violence, right? But MK9 did push the envelope a bit with, some of the violence, the detail, even though it's clearly still fantasy violence. And I still maintain that the Mortal Kombat 9 ban was political. There was someone behind the scenes that wanted the game banned. Maybe not even political. Maybe it was just a rival company or someone paid to have it banned. Because the reason I say that is I know for a fact, because it was leaked to me, that the 4 people who rated the game, because there's 4 people on the board, the 4 people who rated the game, only 2 said it should have been banned in Australia. It was split down the middle. And for a game to be banned in Australia, it has to be unanimous. And it wasn't. It was never unanimous. And that was twice that it wasn't unanimous. They still banned the game. And the second time when it was appealed, they still didn't put up the reason for the ban on the site. And I kept calling them about it. I kept calling the head of the OFLC. His name was Donald McDonald or something. I used to call him Ronald McDonald because he's a clown. And I used to be like, mate, it's not on the site. And they'd be like, yes, it is. I'm like, no, it's not. The initial reason for the game banned is on the site, but not the appeal decision. You haven't put up any information about the appeal decision? No, it's there. They were like that, And in Australia, every time something's appealed or whatever, they're supposed to put up the reasons for it.
Yeah, the decision behind the appeal process is made evident.
Yeah. I just found it very strange. The whole thing, I couldn't believe that got banned, man. I had to cancel my collector's edition and my ultimate edition order, man. I've still got photos of the receipt. The guy at my game store didn't want to cancel it. He thought I was going to go nuts. He made me push the button on the keyboard. Because he knew I loved Mortal Kombat. He's like, I'm not doing it. You push F5. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. If this order is getting canceled, it's on you, not on me.
He did. He made me do that. He knew I wanted it so much. After being to America and playing it at E3.
Yep.
And I would have had all the banners too, because those guys, they really liked me and I spent tons in their store. I would have had all those window banners and advertising. Missed out on all of that.
And you did all this stuff, getting press and going to the promo sites and all that stuff, hyping up the game, and then you can't even play it. Now, some of our viewers...
On top of that, I had a lot of problems even just importing it at first.
Well,
and that was nothing to do with the ban.
I'm going to ask you about that. But some of our viewers might say, oh, well, Tabmock 99, the game technically wasn't banned. It was just denied classification. But the fact of the matter is, if a game in Australia is denied classification, it's illegal. It cannot be played.
It's banned.
And
that's right.
And then it's actually a crime for you to try to get around the ban and play it, right?
Yeah. Maybe. Maybe I have a lot of games that are banned that I shouldn't have.
So if there is a hypothetical Mortal Kombat fan in Australia, what kind of things would this hypothetical person have done to get around the ban?
Hypothetically, we don't even have to be hypothetical, dude. I don't care. Just import. New Zealand is our brother, and they have a different rating system, a different government, and they don't seem to care about violent games. So this has been going on a while. Especially since Grand Theft Auto 3 got censored here because they had to take out the part where you can brain hookers after you have sex with them. I kind of get it because it's still an overreaction to video game violence, but in Australia we have hookers, legal. Do you know what I mean? And they were worried that someone might get that idea. You know what? I could just have sex with her, then kill her. I'm not going to get my money back. That's a really good idea. And I don't know. So it got censored. They had to take that part of it out. And then so everyone just imported the game from New Zealand.
Okay, well, it's right there. Why not?
It's literally like next day shipping. And like people were selling them on eBay for ungodly amounts. It had a different cover, it had different artwork.
Wow.
I think my cousin was flogging a few of them on eBay, making like double or triple the profit. You know.
So could you have made a trip to New Zealand and picked up a couple of copies of these games and made your money back?
Easily.
So when they ban games in Australia, it's basically just an opportunity for the black market then.
Oh yeah, big time. Big time. And like they don't even like, as far as I know, I don't think they even look out for that stuff that's banned as you come through the airport. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sure.
About customs?
Yeah, like you come through, like you have to declare when you come through, like what's in your case.
Right.
And you're like what have you bought in from the foreign country you just come from? Like, for example, when I came back from Chicago, I'm like, I don't know, there's some chocolate in there. They don't care if you say chocolate; they just let you go through. Anything else, they might want to look at it. You know, if they know it's on a list, they might take it away. But you just don't tell them.
So what would happen if they saw you with, let's say, the Mortal Kombat 2011 on your PS3 or on your Xbox 360? What might they have done?
They had put out, which is very strange. Again, that's why I think there's someone behind the scenes. They put out, I'm trying to think if I've still got it. They put out a warning like a long time ago that they were going to fine people who imported it. And they've never done that before. Do you know what I mean? Which is really strange.
Yeah.
There was someone got them out like 50 grand or something. I don't know.
Wow.
I remember doing a YouTube video about it, and I'm like, fuck off, I'm going to import it anyway, you know?
Yeah, that's too big of a fine.
Everyone did. It was such a false threat. Like,
it's really
and the funny thing at the time, I worked near the airport at the time. I'm kind of close to the airport, and every day those custom guys I'd have to serve them in my shop. They had no idea I was importing Mortal Kombat, but I'd see them like every day. Those customs guys.
Yeah, so they know where you were.
They're probably the guys taking away people's games and not realizing that I had Mortal Kombat coming in, you know.
Well, you know, it's crazy that you mentioned there were fines involved because Dan was talking to us earlier. He was explaining that if the police are in your house in Germany and they see a copy of the Mortal Kombat game, they can just confiscate it. They'll just take it from you. And I don't know if it goes any farther than that. I don't know if the punishments go beyond that, like if there's jail time or anything like this. But man, it gets pretty scary, especially as a fan of Mortal Kombat, as a longtime fan, to all of a sudden see this happen at your favorite franchise. It's like, for what? What could have possibly led to this? It has to be political, like you said.
I think the government in like where Dan's from is a lot more strict than here. I don't think they'd ever like ban it here, and I think you could even just play dumb here, like I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you just bought something online.
I bought it at a market. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you want to take it. I don't care. And then when they take it, you just get another one. You know? It's like this.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, like you got to play the game sometimes. You know, play dumb, whatever. You know.
So what about downloading the game?
That's something that couldn't happen here because they can't come into your house without a search warrant.
So what about like downloading the game and stuff? Is that something that can still be done?
I mean, like an illegal download of it.
Okay, like through the PlayStation Store or the Xbox Live Store.
Oh yeah. You know, when the game was banned, dude, I downloaded the demo. You know how I did it?
Tell me. You changed the region on your system?
It was really hard, Justin. Let me just take you through the process. All right. So I went on the PlayStation Store and I said, make new account, right? And then it said, where are you from? And I said, the United States. I wasn't lying. I was definitely from the United States. Then it asked me my address. And I said, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C.
Oh,
That was my address. And then it said, okay, you know,
Live in a nice
That
white
I
house.
went through, and then, and then I'm like, download Mortal Kombat 9 demo.
That's it.
That's it. I'll send you a photo of that if you want for this video. I've got a
might as
photo
well.
of it downloading somewhere. I have to find it though. I have to dig it up.
So what about this? What about, has the game ever been unbanned since then? Have they ever like reversed the ban?
Yes. MK9's been unbanned.
Okay,
And
when did that happen?
Okay, so the reason it first got banned, in fact, maybe I can show you. Let me see if I got something here. I got mythologies here. Oh, this is kind of British. This is, okay, this will do. Sorry. This is my MK4. So, MK4, right?
Yes.
You see this rating? MA 15 plus.
Yes.
That is the highest rating. I'll just read it out because it wasn't focusing. Medium level animated violence. That was the highest rating in Australia on video games for a long time, even though we had an R rating for movies. Like, we've always had that. Case in point, do I have too much? Romper Stomper here? Yeah, Romper Stomper. That's R rated.
Yep.
So you see, we've had that for a long time, the diamond. But it was never applicable to games. So what would happen is they go through the review process and they squeeze the game down. Yeah, it's for 15-year-olds. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how Grand Theft Auto got out. That's how, Bulletstorm got out. God of War, they were all like, they're fine for 15-year-olds, And there was a debate for a long time. It goes back to 2004 for me. I actually wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of Australia. You could email him on the website. I'm assuming you can do the same thing in America. Mm-hmm. And I sent this email.
WhiteHouse.gov,
yeah. So I went to the Parliament House website and I sent this email off like, Australia needs an R rating in video games. And this is in 2004. Deception had just come out. And the reason I sent it was because I could see the violence in Mortal Kombat kind of building up. I could see the graphics getting more real. And I had this foreshadow that it might get banned one day. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that we didn't have the R rating was a problem. Big problem. Not just for Mortal Kombat, for other games too. So there were already games that had been banned at this point because of this, like Postal, Phantasmagoria, Manhunt, what else? I'm sure I'm forgetting other big ones, but Carmageddon almost got banned in Australia. It was like so close to being banned here.
Yeah, that one was cutting it close.
It didn't get banned though, but it was like right on the precipice of like being banned. So yeah, I wrote this letter and I still got it, and I got a reply back like, yeah, we don't have an R rating. It was kind of shit.
Yeah, your point was you need to create one.
Yeah, and they sent me all these brochures about the rating system. I'm like, I have all this, And they
I know how it works. I'm telling you how to improve it.
Yeah. And they mentioned that we don't have one, and I'm like, yeah, but we need one.
Yeah, we should have one. That's the point.
Exactly. And then from then on, there was a discussion, and it got a lot of traction, the R rating for video games, especially at conventions. There would always be a little booth. I think it started in some of the more like community, smaller booths, people from universities or something, unis, and they were like pushing for this thing. And it started off as petitions, and I'd always sign them, and I'd actually sign them a few times. I'd sign it and then go away, and then come back and sign it again.
What is it? Name?
And yeah, I just put my name down like 3 times or something. And yeah, it started like that, and it got more and more steam, and then it more and more popular. And then the problem was then they wanted to go forward with getting an R rating for the games, but there was a guy in South Australia who was like opposed to it. His name was Michael Atkinson. And no matter what the rest of Australia said, he was like, I'll never let there be an R rating in video games. And the way Australia's politics work was someone from each state had to allow it for there to be like a whole agreement.
So how many states are there in Australia? Is it 6?
Sorry?
How many states are there in Australia? It's 6, right?
7.
7.
Yeah. You got Western Australia, Northern Territory, South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania.
So all 7 states have to be in agreement that, yeah, we want to create the R rating. And if one state holds out, that's it. It doesn't happen. It has to be unanimous.
Exactly.
How frustrating.
And so for like 4 years, this guy was like, no, I won't allow it or whatever. And then he started getting threats and shit. The usual typical backlash.
You know, to prove that the video game community isn't violent, he got violent threats.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which didn't help.
No.
So someone, and I wish I remembered his name. I feel bad for not remembering his name. A new guy came along one day, and he proposed that Australia needed the R rating for a different reason. And he said Australia needed that rating because currently they're putting super violent games into a lower category. And that's not right. And that was genius. I've forgotten his name.
That was how you appealed to this guy.
That's how you got shit happening.
Yeah.
Because that actually got a lot of attention. And it was right, really, because they were putting Grand Theft Auto in the hands of 15-year-olds when maybe
both reasons are valid.
Should be for adults, you know?
Yeah.
And as soon as that happened, it just went through. Straight through. Straight through the game. Within a few months, done, you know? Oh, and that guy had quit. That's the other thing, the other reason it went through. He actually, finished his term or something.
So what year was this that this happened? So when did this finally get approved? What year was it that they finally created this new rating?
It was January. I want to say it was either 2011 or 2012.
Okay, so Mortal Kombat, it was probably 2012 then, because Mortal Kombat 9 probably would have just been unbanned and then released with the R rating, with the new rating, right?
Hang on, I'm just checking.
Let's look it up now, yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna run into this. Of course, it's not coming up.
Yeah.
It was either one.
But I imagine it couldn't have been 2011, or else the Mortal Kombat 9 controversy wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah, it would have had to be later, 2012 or maybe even 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
But either way, this new rating was well in place by the time Mortal Kombat X rolled out. So there was no issue that
what happened
banned.
Between Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat Complete Edition, it got unbanned.
Okay.
So I can show you I've got Complete Edition now with the R rating on it.
Do you have the New Zealand copy?
Sorry?
Do you have a copy from New Zealand?
No, it got lost.
Really?
When it first got banned, if you go back and ask around, everyone was like, why don't you have the game? I actually did a video like, why don't you have the game? And it was because I ordered it from this site from New Zealand that everyone talks about being super trustworthy, and it never showed up.
Man.
And then they didn't want to give me my money back. And I said, if you don't give me my money back, I'm going to do a YouTube video about you guys saying not to use your service. And 10,000 people will see that video. You know, because I knew that it was covered by insurance. And you might think I'm a joke for saying that, but I know how business works. And their shipping is covered by insurance. They have to refund you. So if they don't give you your money back, they make twice the profit because they claim the insurance and you paid for the game up front.
Wow.
You understand?
Yeah. So you paid for the game.
Like, no.
Insurance gives them money, so now they made twice as much. And theoretically, they might not have even sent you a game at all.
Exactly.
Well, I guess they would have had to provide proof of shipping in order for them to collect the insurance.
Yeah. I'm not sure what happened, but anyway, in the end, I did get a copy. It just took a bit longer. I've actually got several Mortal Kombat US copies now.
But you never got the New Zealand one.
I never got the New Zealand one. I got 2 collector's editions from the US. Actually, what I did was, you'll like this. I'll see if I can pull this out. Just give me a sec, because there's a box of stuff down here. But this is the original shipping box for MK9 from the US. So my cousin was overseas at the time, and I told him I want the game. I want the collector's edition. I told him take the game out of the box and send the collector's edition over to me. So I get the statues and the book and everything. And I said, and just put the game in your case or something, you know. And he did that. He just walked it through customs.
Well, they can't ban statues now, can they?
Exactly. So, if you look here, this is one of the original delivery crates for Mortal Kombat 9.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
The US. Yeah.
Very cool.
So I've always kept that. That would have been dropped off at, you know, GameStop or whatever it was.
That's what the big retailers had here, yep.
Yeah, they drop them off and take them out. But yeah, that's one of my little souvenirs. I've still got the 2 collectors. I got 2 because someone sold me one. He didn't want it anymore. I'm like, yeah, I'll buy another one. I still never got the Ultimate Edition though.
Well, there's always hope.
I'll get it one day on eBay, but I've got you can see up here, I got the classic one.
Yeah, well, it's getting a little bit cut off in the picture, but yeah, I think I can kind of make it out. Yep, there we go.
Yeah. When I was in Colorado, I was actually asking for the other one. I'm like, do you happen to have this tournament stick? And I was really sick at the time. My voice was like, yeah, we got it. I'm like, okay. And I went down there. And I remember saying to him, not the classic one. And they're like, no, it's the other one. And I got that.
Yeah, you want one of each. So what system is that one? What system is that one for anyway?
This one?
Yeah.
PlayStation.
Yeah, cool.
I didn't care what system it was for. I wanted a stick.
Yeah, the aesthetic.
Yeah,
the aesthetic
the
is
classic
nice.
was cool. Don't get me wrong, but like the MK9 one was so nice.
Oh, yeah.
People were offering it to me for free, dude, on my YouTube channel.
Wow.
At the time. They were like, we're going to send it to you, and I told everyone, don't do it. Like, as much as I appreciate that gesture. So, if any of those people are watching, thanks for that gesture. But I didn't want them. They send me something, and then it just gets taken away. It's just crap, you know.
You don't want it to be taken by customs. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Exactly.
Well, that was a good thing, man. Well, listen, thank you very much for walking us through the perspective of an Australian and how you guys kind of went through that whole thing with the denied classification and the games being banned. I'm really glad you guys overcame that. I hope that our country doesn't start going in the wrong direction now because of everything that's happening.
No. I got another story before you go. You might like this one.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mentioned earlier that Manhunt was banned in Australia, right?
I think so, yeah.
So what happens when a game gets banned? I'm not really sure how. I kind of know a few things. When Grand Theft Auto 3 was banned, we got this email from Rockstar that was passed on to us. And so you got to take the game off the shelf. I know because I took the last copy for myself. I still got it sealed.
Wait, so you actually get it in the stores, and then you're told, uh-oh, you can't sell it. And then, well, immediately that copy that you're holding in your hand, now that's worth a fortune.
I still got it sealed.
How much do you think that's
3.
worth?
Yeah.
How much do you think you could get for it?
Probably not much now because, like, I don't know. I think it's more that I know it's the original. Like,
right.
But there were imports and so many flying around. So many people probably don't care about it being a legitimate like version. Like for me, it's like a collector's piece. But like, I don't think it has a big value on it because you can still just get GTA 3 from wherever, you know, uncensored.
You know, that reminds me, there was one other thing I was going to ask you about. So when you get one of these games imported, or like you get the demo by changing what country you're registering your account from, or anything like
I
that.
was from Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Very, very presidential. Well, how do you do the online play? Is that a problem? Does it work? Can you still do it?
I think it just works. I don't think they block that.
Okay.
But like a lot of those games, no, it just works. That's right, because I had an Australia.
Because if I'm playing a game that's been denied classification and there's these huge fines that are being threatened on if I import it, and now I'm going into a room and playing it online and everybody can see my gamer tag or whatever, that wouldn't make you a little bit nervous though, would it?
Nah. Like I said, I don't know it's bad. My mate gave it to me.
Yeah. How do
I don't hang out on the OFLC website. How was I supposed to know it was banned? No one knocked on my door and told me it's banned.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Are you supposed to know every game that's banned or not?
Yeah, like in Australia, they have strict laws. If they want everyone to know something, they have to let you know properly. Like, for example, these games have this sticker on it. So when you buy it, you know that's for 15-year-old. They have to put that on by law. You know what I mean?
Right,
and
so
even when they sell games, like EB would import games sometimes.
Yeah.
Bit shit. And then they just put the Australian sticker on it.
So you think it's legit.
And that would be legal.
Really?
Because it met the Australian standards then. Yeah, the Australian standard was that it had to have the Australian rating sticker on it.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay. So is
Didn't
that
matter
true
where
for
the game was
movies?
from.
That true for movies as well then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
But
American
movies were a bit different because they had regions and that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you couldn't just slap a sticker on it and have it work.
Yeah, because a lot of people would be like, it doesn't work. It says change region. What's that mean? But the other story I had for you was after Manhunt was banned, I'd go around. At the time, I was buying a lot of secondhand games, like in stores. I was picking up Mortal Kombats for like $3 or $5. I got a whole big pile of them now. I just buy them whenever I saw one cheap.
Yep.
You know. Anyway, now you can't. You go into that same store now, and they want like $50 for Mortal Kombat or 40. They've like learned like eBay, but they haven't even learned. They've just asked for stupid prices now. But I used to just pick them up when they didn't care, like $3, $4, $5. You know. But one day I go into this. It's a cash converters. I go into this cash converters, and I look in the cabinet and I see Manhunt, and I look closer, and it's sealed. It's sealed, like it's never been opened for PlayStation 2. And I go to the guy that I've been talking to every day. I go, I'll grab that. I goes, we've got more if you want it. I go, what?
Yeah.
And he opens the cupboard underneath, right? And there's 30 copies, brand new, sealed. This game's banned in Australia.
Right.
And there's 30 brand new copies sitting right there. And I wanted to buy them all, but I just couldn't get the money together. But at the time, but I was going to just buy them all because like they were brand new. I bought one for me. I still got it. I was streaming it not too long ago, you know. But that just goes to show they banned the game. And so what happens? It doesn't. They've got an Australian printed version with the Australian logo and the Australian rating and the Australian. What are they supposed to do with it? Destroy it? I don't think they destroy it. I think they just dump them.
You think it's possible that they may not even know that it's banned? Some of the workers at the stores, they can't keep up with every game that's banned.
All right. These 30 copies they were dumped by either someone who worked in the industry or someone who worked at a distribution house.
Yeah.
This is like someone who didn't own 30 copies. This is clearly like that. I don't remember some weird stuff. I've got some weird stories, man. Like when I was working in the computer store, we were doing mod chips for a while if people wanted them. Like that, and that was legal. In Australia, that was legal.
So explain that. How does that work?
Mod chips have had a up and down road in Australia, like being legal, now being illegal. Like basically, my PlayStation in Australia, if I want to do whatever I want to it, I can. That's the law. That includes putting a mod chip in it. You know, as long as there's no law that says you can't have a mod chip in your system.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a law that says you can't play copied games. But I remember once, and this is so weird. I'm just trying to get the story right. Maybe I've got this wrong. Hang on a second. No, I think I've got this wrong. Sorry. No, we were selling Dreamcasts. Sorry, it's been a while. I'm getting old. We were selling Dreamcasts, and a company came to us and said they wanted a whole lot of Dreamcasts, right? And I think they wanted like 10 Dreamcast systems, and we got them. I think they wanted them modded.
And they wanted you to sell modded systems.
Yeah, at first they just wanted 10 Dreamcasts, and then I think it just came up like, can you mod them? And I think they might have been using them as dev consoles. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe.
They're trying to
I'm not
build
sure.
Well, if they wanted so
I won't say what company it is, but anyway, we got them the 10 Dreamcast, we got them the mods, and then to thank us, they paid for everything, but they gave us a whole box of their Dreamcast titles at the time.
Wow.
A whole box, which was like 50 copies of a very popular Dreamcast game, or two or three Dreamcast games. I always found that weird. Like that. So that's
I don't think that's weird because I think Sega's development systems were very expensive. So I think by you modifying the system, you probably made things a lot easier for them.
That's probably how they got around it. And it doesn't surprise me doing that in Australia, doing something on the cheap like that. You know, but it's just interesting, like I said, like if a game gets banned, it just seems to get dumped. Like they just dump it somewhere, dump it in a secondhand store. It's not our problem anymore. You know what I mean?
You gotta do something. You can't just hype up the game and spend all this money marketing it and creating the discs and pressing it. And by the way, you can't sell it. That really wasn't a fair system, and I'm so glad that they now have this 18 classification. And it sounds like for you guys in the foreseeable future, this isn't going to be a problem anymore.
Nah, not with the R rating. And there was another time that a store I worked at, he had a promo copy of Manhunt, and he put it on eBay to sell it. And they actually took down the auction. They actually knew it was banned and took it down.
Wow. So, yeah, people are taking a close look at this stuff.
Yeah, we were just like, whatever. You'll allow ticket scalping, but you won't allow
what if he had listed his country as being New Zealand? What would have happened then? He could have just signed up for a new eBay account, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Can't they're not going to enforce Australian laws on a New Zealand seller, would they?
It's exactly right. It's all about loopholes and grey areas. You know, being in Australia, generally most of the games are untouched here. A lot of people seem to think like we ban everything, and we do have strict laws on games. Like, we have this weird drug law, like drugs can't benefit you in the game. If they do, that game can be banned.
Even magic mushrooms? Because I know a game.
Dude, they banned, what was it? It was one of the, Fallout. I think it was Fallout. They had to take out change the name of the medical kit or something. Not Fallout 3, I think it was 2 or something. I think it was one of the Fallouts, I don't know. They had to change the name of the health item because it gave you a bonus point. And they weren't going to release it.
They really look at this stuff closely.
I don't think Blitz the League ever got out here. That old Midway game.
Yep.
Because it was all about taking drugs and then, like, knocking everyone over on the field or something.
Yeah, that wouldn't go over very well.
They didn't like that here.
So listen, thank you again for this conversation. This has been very enlightening. Thank you for walking me through what it was like to go through the whole thing where Mortal Kombat is banned or denied classification because it's not really a ban, but it is. And I'm so glad that's over with.
Classification.
Exactly. I'm really glad things
are
working
out well for you now. Man. This is bullshit.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share with me before we wrap it up?
No. It was fun talking about this because like a lot of people don't understand like the technical details of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really a thing anymore, but it's still games can still be banned here. Like I said, if they don't, any game that mentions like any sort of rape will just be instantly banned here. They won't even like think twice about it. That's why South Park got that screen with the koala bear. A lot of people don't understand that that's a rape scene. Like if you look at it, because Mr. Slade comes in like, ooh, like and just rapes the person. Like there's no consent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, can't have that.
So they said that that's rape. So that instantly meant that the game was going to be banned. So that's why that screen would come up. I don't make the rules. I just live by them.
Well, okay. So in order to get around the ban now, they will take scenes out. They'll censor them. They'll make changes.
That's right. Yeah. They'll make little changes.
Consistent. They still have certain guidelines they need to adhere to.
Yeah. Actually, I'll add something just before I go. We were talking about the Mortal Kombat ban, the appeal.
Yeah.
When they appealed it, the guy they got to appeal it was a really good guy at appealing games. He'd appealed games for Sega in the past. I've forgotten his name. and it got them unbanned. Like, they said that this was banned for this reason. This guy had appealed it, and then bang, the game was released. And I remember being like, yeah, MK's gonna get a ban, like, because we had this guy, like, this like legend, and they still banned it. I couldn't believe it. I was so mad, dude.
Yeah, you were probably thinking that guy would have won. But look, we eventually got it, right? You got it for the complete edition, so it all works out.
I got the collectors, I got the complete. I just never got that store merch for this crap. I would have big banners.
Yeah, you had a pretty good
collection.
You would have had a complete collection, right?
Well, I have the MKX window banners, I have the Injustice window banners. They don't do them anymore. They put screens in the window now.
Right.
But sometimes I can get my hand on the occasional banner. It's like older stores might have the screens.
Yep.
But yeah, it would have been nice to have an MK9 one.
Yep. Well, all right. Hey, thanks again. This has been enlightening.
No problem.
Thanks for joining me, Luke. It was interesting to get the Australian perspective on things. Now I'm going to share with you some of the scientific research findings I found. First up is the November-December 2014 issue of Skeptical Inquirer. So this one is called Video Game Violence and Pseudoscience, Bad Science, Fear, and Politics. So I think this is interesting, especially this little quote here. The theory that violent video games increase aggression continues to fail when it's evaluated by independent courts. There's another good quote here. The social narrative linking violent games to mass shootings is a powerful one, providing an explanation for the unexplainable, and providing an illusion of control over the uncontrollable. Yeah, they go into details here. This one covers a lot of facts. Like a previous shooter said they had more interest in playing non-violent video games like Dance Dance Revolution than they did with violent ones. So stuff like this is pretty good counter-evidence to the narrative that video game violence is in any way responsible for any of these shootings that we're seeing. The article continues by saying that the research involving video games and their connection to violence is not very scientifically done. It's more pseudoscience. In fact, at the current stage, the field risks becoming little more than opinions with numbers. Not very good science overall from the people who try to link the two. Hasn't been done scientifically yet, and so a lot of pseudoscience has been resorted to. Yeah, good article. Smart. Genius. I'm also going to share with you what I found in the July-August 2015 issue of Scientific American Mind. So this is also a pretty good article. It's called The Truth About Video Games and Violence. And the article itself is called How Violent Video Games Really Affect Kids. So what I like about this one is a subsection called A Tradition of Worry, where they talk about how even going back to the Victorian era, people were worried about things like penny dreadfuls, and there were moral panics, even continuing into the 20th century with things like cartoons and movies and TV and things like that. They contain a lot of sex and violence. But guess what? They weren't really able to establish any connection or any cause and effect relationship. So those things have become part of the culture. They've just become accepted. They also talk about deciphering the data because they can't really measure the violence directly. They can't attribute violent behaviors in the classroom directly to violent video games that the kids have played. They use a lot of proxy measures. So they try to measure it by times where the kids are more vigilant for their enemies or when they get into arguments with their teachers. But the article also points out that the fighting kids do in physical games after playing video games, it's just a simulation. It's just play. It might look like fighting, but it's not. In fact, in a way, it's the opposite of fighting because it's carried on by those who are not enemies and who do not intend to harm each other. So I like this article. It concludes by saying that there's no reason to worry that a violent game is going to turn our kids into killers. An article in USA Today showed that only 20% of school shooters played violent video games, compared with 70% of high schoolers overall. So it seems like kind of a stretch to connect violent video games with school shootings. I mean, normally you could say that correlation doesn't mean causation, but in this case, there isn't even correlation. Well, guys, I hope that clears everything up. There is absolutely no empirical evidence linking violent video games to violent behavior in the real world. Of course, if somebody is already predisposed to violence, then they're more likely to become violent in the real world, whether there are violent video games or not. I hope I can talk about something else a little bit more pleasant next time. But you know what? In the wake of a national tragedy, I felt this is a conversation that we need to have. And hopefully, we won't continue to need to have it. Hopefully, our leaders will think of an actual solution and concentrate on things that are more likely to make a difference and leave the video games alone. So hopefully, the next video will be a little bit more fun, a little bit more entertaining, not so heavy-handed. Until next time, this is TabMock99. See you then.